Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our last session of SIICaP Data Camp, the show and tell event. The SIICaP Data Camp is brought to you by PhilSA's Space Information and Infrastructure Bureau. This event is also part of PhilSA's celebration of World Space Week. So in this session, we will give the floor to you, to our participants who heed our call for proposals to work with geospatial data. Hence the show and tell activity. So makikita na natin yung mga magigiting na tao na nagsubmit ng kanilang proposals and who are qualified to show and tell their results today. So before we start with our activity, here are some instructions. We expect participants to conduct themselves free from discriminatory practices. The audiences should mute their microphones and turn off their cameras when not in use. Everyone are also encouraged to use the chat box to type in their questions. Our moderators will help us compile these questions and address them to our speakers. For everyone's information, this session is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube. Lastly, an evaluation link will be sent to you after the session. Please answer them to receive your certificate of attendance. So here is one of our SIICaP Data Camp heads, Engineer Nico Pante, to give the overview of this program. Nico, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Wait lang. So, kita nyo naman yung full screen ko. Full screen ba yung nakikita?
Yes, correct.
Pati right now, full screen.
Yes, Nico, I can see your presentation.
Okay, thank you. So, magandang hapon sa lahat, sa ating mga audience, presenters, judges, co-organizers natin dito. Happy World Space Week. Magbibigay lamang ako ng quick overview ng program na to. So, this is our last session for Data Camp. For the last 4 sessions, nagturo kami ng dalawang klase ng geospatial data using Python. We also opened the call in session 4 for this show and tell. Sa mga nakamiss na to, it's on PhilSA's YouTube account. For today's program, participants naman ang mag-share ng mga ginawa nila gamit ang mga natutunan nila sa previous sessions. So this is the overview of this program. After my presentation, we will go ahead sa ating mga presenters. So based on their submission, we were able to group them depending sa theme. Bale, nagkaroon ng tatlong set of presentations. So for each set, may question and answer portion for the presenter of that set. So this is the result of that grouping. The first set focuses sa mapping, visualization, and processing ng geospatial data. Makikita natin dito yung iba't ibang uri ng application ng geospatial data. Second, it focuses sa disaster risk reduction, and our last set focuses on health. Afterwards, we will have a short break. After all the presentations, magkukompute kami kung sino magwawagi for the best presentations. After that ay ang exciting part, ang awarding. Finally, we will have a photo opportunity and closing remarks. Just a reminder for our presenters, this is the criteria for grading your presentation. So 50% para sa organization ng content, 30% sa oral presentation, and last ay 20% para sa knowledge of the subject matter. And to help us determine the winners, here are the judges. Una ay si Kesaya Bartilad, isa sa mga senior science research specialist sa Space Mission Control and Operations Division. Naging parte din siya ng Stamina for Space program. Graduate siya ng BS-ECE and MS-EC or Electronics Engineering. Next ay si Brian Briones, isa siyang Information Officer sa aming Public Relations and Informations Division. She's currently taking her Master of Arts in Communication. Ayan. She manages communications dito sa PhilSA. Ang third naman ay si Rain or Ronald Alan Pedaglorio. Ka-division namin siya sa High Performance Computing and Information Systems Division. Graduate siya ng Computer Engineering. Madalas din siyang nandito sa SIICaP to help our technical needs. Ang last ay si Jomari Tabardillo, isang remote sensing and GIS specialist mula sa Space Data Mobilization and Applications Division. Graduate ng Geodetic Engineering, nagpa-process siya ng data for downstream applications. So muli, enjoy the rest of the program. Salamat.
Thank you, Nico, for giving the overview of the program. I forgot to introduce myself. Ako ulit si Frank from the High Performance Computing Information Systems Division of PhilSA, one of the information technology officers. So actually, I was the resource trainer last data camp on processing raster and vector data, but now you're MC for today. And yeah, we will now start our show and tell activity. So for the first set of presentations, so our first presenter is Benjamin Joseph Jiao, presenting his project entitled Oras, a rhythm generator based on geospatial time series data. Hi, Benj, please, the floor is yours.
Hello. I-cue ko lang yung yung presentation ko. Wait.
Sure.
Can you see my my video?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so wala. Okay. I'll mute myself now and I'll play the video. Thank you, Frank.
Okay.
What you're listening to right now is a musical pattern based on earthquakes since the 1700s. Every blink of the top LED represents a day. The second LED blinks if an earthquake was recorded during that day. The third one blinks if that earthquake was magnitude 8 or up. And the fourth one blinks if a major earthquake was recorded within the Philippines. My name is Benji. My background is in computer science and geoinformatics. I currently work for Project AirMove. It's a DOST-funded project based in UP Diliman. Our focus is on ambient air quality monitoring. For this show and tell, however, I will be talking about another very special interest of mine, which is music. This is my modular synthesizer system. I built it myself. You can think of it as your typical electric piano or synthesizer, but with its parts broken down into individual modules that I can swap around and modify. We can classify the modules into three main categories for the sake of this discussion. First are the audio sources. These are the ones that make the sounds. The processors are the ones that tweak and modify these signals. And finally, the sequencers and controllers, which tell the audio sources and the processors what to do. The module that I'll talk about is called Oras. It's a sequencer that I designed that takes in a text file and uses the data in that file to produce a pattern. We can then use that pattern of signals to trigger events such as a drum hit, or a bell, or a piano key press per se. In this one, I made a beat using what's called a 5 to 4 to 3 polyrhythm. That file looks like this. One output goes off every 5 beats, the other every 4, and the third one every 3. Since you could do pretty much anything with a file, I thought I could use other more interesting datasets to form a pattern, especially ones that you could plot over time, like natural events. One of the datasets that came to mind was the earthquake data that I used for one of my master's classes. I downloaded free earthquake data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration of the US. I then used Jupyter Notebook and Pandas to prepare it for my synth. This is what it looks like. First, we import the essential libraries that we're gonna use later. I downloaded the data manually from the US NOAA site. I then read the CSV file and loaded that into a data frame. I checked the columns. I also checked the location data. So here we see that the data is represented in a well-known text format. I do some basic data cleanup. So I remove rows with no dates. I make sure that the numbers were parsed correctly. So I make sure that years are represented in integers and so on. I also remove the years before the 1700s. And then I create a new column called date. I make sure that the date column is an actual Python date object. After cleaning up the data, I can now do some filtering. So the first one that I did was to extract great earthquakes, which are those with magnitude 8 or up. I use a polygon that represents the bounds of the Philippines. I load that into Shapely and then use that Shapely object as a filter for my geodata frame. I use the intersects function for that. With that, I get a list of all earthquakes since the 1700s that are located within the Philippines. Finally, I loop through each day since the 1700, and then I build my text file. So in the text file, we have one row per day, and then for each column, we use our filtered data frames. So for the first column, we just use the first data frame that we had. So if there was an earthquake during that day, it will be 1. If none, it will be 0. For the second column, if there was a great earthquake, which is magnitude 8 or up, it will be 1. For the third column, it will be marked 1 if there was an earthquake within the Philippines. Listening to your data was very interesting to me. I have in the past let this run for an hour or so, and it was cool to hear the earthquakes pass in clusters of 2 to 3 or even more. It was made even more interesting knowing that these were actual events that happened. I have yet to try this on other datasets. I'm pretty sure other things like typhoons or planetary movements will also produce interesting patterns. I would like to thank the Philippine Space Agency for doing this series of events. I applaud your efforts for reaching out to people, especially students, and teaching different techniques in dealing with space data. If you're interested in doing something like this, I encourage you to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at @benjomodular or on YouTube at @benjijiao. I post a lot about synth DIY and other making stuff such as 3D printing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope I somehow was able to demonstrate that data can be musical too.
Thank you, Bench, for the very creative output. No? So instead of visual, it appears on your on the sound, on the audio side of things. No? So if you have any question for Bench, please drop them in the chat box. Bench will answer your questions on our first Q&A after the set of this first set of presentations. So to give you the next presentation, here is Miss Annie Dean S. Arias. Her project is entitled Earthquake Data Visualization. Hi, Annie, please take it away. Okay, sige. I believe wala pa siya dito. So, can we move on to our next presentation? Sige. Okay, for our first session, uh, Our next presenter is a group effort done by Jimmy and Meyer with their project Mapping of Public Elementary Schools for NCE Race campaign. Hi, Jimmy and Meyer, please take it away.
Thank you po. Good afternoon. Let me share my screen lang po.
Yes, please.
Medyo mabagal lang po yung wifi dito sa school. Teka lang po. Okay, busy po, busy po.
Ayan,
Okay po.
we can see it.
Okay po. Thank you po. Maayong hapon sa tanan. Magandang hapon sa lahat, sa facilitators and sa participants. So this afternoon, I will share a project proposal which is mapping the public elementary schools for a more efficient and effective NCE race campaign in Soxardan campus. So the following content. First, the description of our project proposal. Next is the significance of the project. Next, methodology. Next is the analysis and discussion of our results. And lastly, so for the project description, we are, Sir and I are teachers from, okay. So Sir Jimmy and I are teachers from Philippine Science High School, Soxargen Region Campus, and our institution offers a free high school STEM education for incoming grade 7 students. Before the pandemic, we had the National Competitive Exam, or NCE, to screen who will qualify. So in lieu of the NCE, or the National Competitive Exam, scholar applications of interested pupils are now screened through the required admission criteria and evaluation, or RACE. Every year, we conduct school-to-school campaign to different elementary schools within Soxargen or Region 12 to submit applications for NCE and now RACE. Next now. So our project aims to gain or increase the number of applicants from public elementary schools that are seldom visited due to their location and limited access due to the access to the internet, where most of our publicity materials are posted. This project is also our prototype pa po, and we applied what we have learned in the last 4 weeks of lecture, and hopefully we can expand this project for our next campaign using the data for the whole Soxargen area. So for the methodology, we first collected our data from the school registrar. The only available data as of date are the number of applicants for year 2019 and the total number of qualifiers from public elementary schools within Coronadal City. So the data na nakuha po namin from the school registrar, we then plotted the data, delineated the national and provincial roads and the Coronadal City boundary through GeoJSON.
We then process the data, but before processing the data, we have to consider the following factors in choosing our priority schools. First, we have to choose the schools that have 0 qualifiers for the NCE race, and schools with 0 applicants for NCE race, and schools outside the 1 kilometer radius of the national, provincial, or city road. So after considering these factors, then we try to use the learnings that we have using Google Colab and Python GeoPandas. So we read the file for the Coronadal boundary, road, and school as shown in Figure 1, Figure 2, and Figure 3. So after that, we try to filter the school data where the qualifiers is 0 and applicants also is 0. And we try to convert the coronadal boundary, road, and school into projected coordinate system and create a buffer for coronadal road for 1 kilometer, and then set this geometry of coronadal road to buffer. And since there are overlapping in the road, so we try to use the dissolve method to remove the overlap between the coronadal road buffer. And then right after that, we create an overlay with the coronadal boundary and the road buffer by intersecting it or using the intersection. And also, we try to create a buffer for the coronadal school just to create an emphasis of the school, and then set its geometry school to buffer. Then right after that, we create an overlay with coronadal schools and boundary by using the symmetric difference, and create an overlay with coronadal road and the previous overlay using the symmetric difference also. So by our final output, the next slide. So here is the slides. So the final output. So the points covered by the purple region are the schools with no qualifiers and applicants for the NCE race and outside the 1 kilometer radius of the national highway. Meanwhile, the points outside the purple region are the schools with no qualifiers and applicants for the NCE race but lies within the 1 kilometer radius of the national highway. So if we look closely, next slide, there are actually 7 schools that are covered by the purple region. So that is our priority schools to have or to conduct the NCE campaign. While the other 5 schools are still the schools that we have to conduct, but they are the second priority schools because they lie within the 1 kilometer radius. So in conclusion, the first priority schools, there are 7 schools that are currently not reached by the NCE campaign, race campaign, and these schools have no applicants nor qualifiers and must be given priority in the campaign. While the second priority schools are the schools that are within the 1 kilometer radius but have no applicants nor qualifiers in the NCE race. So they were reached by the campaign but needs follow-up to strengthen awareness. And we also observed that there are schools with no qualifiers nor applicants. So since we have a program called the Bridging Academic Capabilities for K-12 elementary teachers or bracket, so this training will enhance the teachers of grade 5 and 6 pupils for them to help their students learn and cope with the STEM curriculum of the PSHSS and soon become our applicants and qualifiers for the NCE race. So that's our output. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Jamie and Maya, for your insights and recommendations. For questions on their presentation, please use the chat box, and then we will answer them later. For our next presenter, we would like to call again Annilyn Arias for earthquake data visualization. Annie, are you here? Ayan, let's wait for a few seconds. All right, so sige. For our first set of presentations, we have Ben Zhao for Oras, a rhythm generator based on geospatial time series data. And our second presenter for this session is Jimmy and Meyer for mapping of public elementary schools for NCE race campaign. So we will now proceed to our first Q&A session. So sige, let me read the questions. This question is addressed to Benji Zhao. So hello. The question is, aside from musical pursuits, you think your project can be used to present data for visually impaired people. So how can we help the visually impaired people? Please,
Yeah.
Benj.
Oh, that's a great idea, no? I think yeah, that makes sense, but syempre I think we should still test it to actual uh visually impaired na people so that we can confirm that uh claim. Pero yeah, actually it is a great it's a great tool na it's a great tool to find patterns na yung hindi mo tinitingnan. So parang you can parang intuitively find groups of earthquakes halimbawa ganyan. But the thing that I found as I played with it is that since medyo mahaba yung timeline na ginamit ko, it's hard to pinpoint kung nasaan yung mga yon. So I think that's they'll still have limitations. So siguro kung they're for visually impaired people, for example, if they want to check a large data set like the one I used, baka mas useful pa rin yung tactile na method where they can actually go back a few steps tapos continue ganyan. Pag musical kasi tuloy-tuloy siya and then you will have to wait for it to loop back. So yun. But that's a great exercise. Pwedeng i-try nga. Lalo kung
Agree.
short patterns lang.
Agree. Pwede nating pagsamahin yung tactile and yung audio, di ba? Pwede rin ganun.
Oo nga, no? That's a great suggestion. Salamat.
Okay. Yung mga judges ba natin, meron ba kayong questions for Benj, Jimmy, and Meyer?
Hi, I have a question for Jimmy and Mar. For your NCE race campaign versus the old method, how does it improve on your on that the one that you presented?
Hello po. So usually po kasi what we do in our campaign is just to visit the school along the highway. So pag yung mga school are beyond 1 kilometer radius, medyo hindi na masyadong napupuntahan or medyo malayo na po siya sa area na pinupuntahan ng mga nagkakandak ng campaign. So what we want to do is to focus on those area because one of the mandate of the PSHS is to give scholarship to those deserving students which are actually on those areas, yung mga hindi masyadong napupuntahan namin. Yun po.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Kes. Ako, I have a question to Jimmy. Meron ba kayong, so you already determined the schools that are candidates for your NCE race campaign. Meron ba kayong timeline on when will you do this? Or parang ano pa lang siya? Conceptual plan?
Actually, sir, nasa conceptual plan pa lang po ito kasi the data that we have gathered, especially for the applicants, kailangan kasi namin kunin yung data from the admission office that is in the system, hindi po sa campus namin. So yun po, nahirapan kaming kumuha ng data. So maybe pag nakuha na namin yung data, we can proceed with the next plan po, implementing it.
All right, sige.
Thank you.
Let's wait for a few moments. Baka may other questions pa from the judges and the participants. All right, I believe wala na. So that ends our Q&A session for the first team, which is yung mapping and audio visualization. Ayan. So thank you for that. So we are done with the first session. So let's now move on to our second session, second theme related to DRRM. So for the first presenter for this will be Rafael Gutierrez, with his project Geospatial Analysis of Evacuation Centers and Flood Hazards in Marikina City. Hi, Rafael. Are you ready to present? Yes, please. Share your screen. Ayan, we can see the video. Please try to play.
So good afternoon to each and everyone. I'm Rafael E. Gutierrez and this is my presentation on geospatial analysis of evacuation centers and flood hazards in Marikina City. So let's go to the background. Marikina is a highly urbanized city in the NCR. Flood is a fact of life in Marikina and it is a flood-prone area because the city has a big urban river and is a catch basin of the nearby Sierra Madre. So here's the administrative map of Marikina. So what I want to highlight here is the Marikina River in blue that spans from the northern part of the city down to the southwest part. So later on, I'll explain why this river is important in tackling flood hazards in Marikina. So I've listed the 5, I could say, worst flood-related events that happened in the city. So I've already talked about Marikina, floods, recent typhoons. So what's this project all about? So what do we want to achieve here? First is the project context. So the goals of this project are just to identify the flood hazards of each barangay and evacuation centers, to recommend areas to build your evacuation center, cluster them, and identify the influencing attribute of the clusters. So here's the methodology of this analysis. In the data collection, datasets are collected from LIPAD, DSWD, PSA, and topographic map. In the data cleaning, I use NumPy and Pandas to clean data. In the EDA, I use GeoPandas, Contextily, Matplotlib to perform initial investigations to the dataset. In the feature engineering, label encoding and standard scaler are used for the transformation. And clustering, I use a clustering algorithm to uncover the hidden clusters. So let's go to the findings of this project. First is the flood hazards. So here's the flood hazard map with 3 categories, high, medium, and low hazard level. And here's Marikina City in the map. So what does this map tell us? So let's go to the figures. So 65.55% of Marikina is under flood hazard levels 1 to 3. And if we break this down, level 3 has the highest percentage of 34.83%. So gray is the area with no hazards. With this map alone, we can create some assumptions as to why these areas have no flood hazard, because this part, if we look in topographic maps, has higher elevation compared to others. And in orange, the carrot-like shape at the lower part, if you notice in the map, that's literally at the right side of one of the main roads in Marikina. And at the left is the Marikina River. And in red, if you still recall, where we traced the Marikina River, all those locations are near the river and are considered highly hazardous. So here's the composite map of the Marikina City flood hazard. So next, here are the barangays with large distributions of flood hazard levels. So majority of them are under level 3 or considered highly hazardous. And here's the map of flood hazard level per barangay. And let's go to the evacuation centers. So here's a map of evacuation centers categorized per barangay. Next is the evacuation center count per barangay. So we have here one barangay that doesn't have any evacuation center. So for the figures of 33 evacuation centers in the city, almost all of them are schools, and Concepcion Uno has the highest number, and Tumana has 0. And if you recall, Marikina River passes through this barangay, so news will tell you that Tumana inhabitants seek shelter to nearby barangays in case of flood emergencies. And here's the table of evacuation centers per barangay, and the composite map of Marikina City evacuation centers. And in this table is the flood hazard categories of each evacuation center. So what's interesting to note here is that some of these evacuation centers has different hazard level compared or than the barangay it's residing. So for example, majority of Barangay Fortune is in hazard level 3, but both of its evacuation centers, Fortune ES and Fortune HS, are located in an area in the barangay that has no hazard level. So here's the map of the flood hazard level per evacuation center. So 25.92% of Marikina is not within the range of any evacuation center. So that's 118,236 estimated inhabitants. So here's the map of the areas not covered by evacuation centers. So as you can see, Tumana has a large area right here, and inward also is the ideal areas to build new evacuation centers. So let's go to the clustering. So I chose K-means with 2 clusters because it outperformed the rest. So using this model, we can now have this map of clusters. We have cluster 0 and cluster 1. And Fortune ES and Fortune HS are the only evacuation centers in cluster 1. So here we have the correlation matrix of all features. And what this tells us is that elevation is 85% correlated to the clusters. So the higher the elevation, the higher the cluster. And if we go back, these two are the only evacuation centers in cluster 1. So this is the main characteristic of cluster 1. So can we say that these evacuation centers are safer than the rest? Maybe, because earlier we talked about that these two are at hazard level 0, even though Barangay Fortune is in level 3. So, but why is it that the rest of evacuation centers are in cluster 0 even if they have no flood hazard? So the answer is still elevation, because they are in the lower ground than these two. As a matter of fact, I have here the evacuation centers per elevation table, and majority of them are between 10 meters to 29 meters. So let's go to the recommendations. So here's the recommendations of this project. It is recommended to build new evacuation centers within 25.92% of total area of Marikina for its 118,236 inhabitants. So 34.83% of total area is in hazard level 3, and a lot of evacuation centers are situated in this area. So safety reassessment, revamping, and better urban planning must be considered. Tumana has 0 evacuation centers in its vicinity, so building one might help for its 47,468 inhabitants, not to go to other barangays in case of emergency. And we identify that elevation has high impact in identifying the safeness of an evacuation center from flash floods. So evacuation centers from cluster 0 must ensure that safety is the utmost priority, and better urban planning with this consideration is needed. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael, for the presentation. If you have questions, please use the chat box, and we will answer them in the Q&A session later. So the next project that will be presented related to DRRM, here is Siegfried Roy Cudilla for estimation of probabilities of extreme rainfalls in the Philippines. Hi, Siegfried.
Hello, good afternoon. Ang kita po ba sa screen ko is yung ano lang? Yung PowerPoint lang?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Sige po. Ay, wait lang. So estimating probabilities of extreme rainfalls in the Philippines. So some preliminary concepts muna. In analyzing extreme rainfalls, pwede tayo mag-analyze ng historical maximum rainfall that occurred. For example, dito sa graph ko sa kanan, ay makita natin yung, this is from the range around 1900 up to the present time. Nakuha ko yung data na ito from Pag-asa. As you can see, sa Baguio, naka-experience siya ng pinakamataas na single day amount of rainfall, parang 1,000 millimeter of rainfall within a single day. Pero kasi, ang problem natin dito ay hindi natin makita yung probabilities. Gaano ba ka-frequent yung ganitong extreme event? So in probabilistic risk analysis, so obtaining probabilities is very important, especially if we are ranked 1 in the World Risk Index. And more insightful nga naman kapag nakita natin yung probabilities na extreme events na to. So sa risk assessment, especially in hydrology and flood modeling, very important yung konsepto ng return periods or recurrence intervals. For example, if meron tayong 400 millimeter of rainfall na mayroong 50-year time period, ibig sabihin meron siyang 1 in 50 years chance or 2% chance of being exceeded within a year. Another intuitive interpretation is a 400 millimeter of rainfall is expected to be exceeded once every 50 years. So ano pa ang importance ng analyzing extreme and rare events? So if there is a new catastrophe in an area, yung laging sinasabi ng mga mayors and town leaders ay hindi pa kasi nangyayari ito, kaya hindi pa kami handa. So, kailan kayo magiging handa, di ba? So, note that an extreme event, however rare, as long as it is in the sampling space, will eventually occur. So, makes you think of the, di ba, yung lotto last time, yung 433 winners. Kahit rare siya, it will happen as long as it is in the sampling space. So, some theory here, return level estimation. For the computation of return levels, meron tayong tinatawag na generalized extreme value distribution. Hindi ko na i-explain masyado yung theory, but ang mahalaga dito is yung mga parameters. We have the location parameter mu, yung scale parameter sigma, and scale parameter chi. So, mamaya papakita ko yun sa inyo. So using maximum likelihood estimation, para mag-fit siya ng probability distribution per histogram per weather station. So data processing, para mas maintindihan nyo, nag-import from NOAA FTP server, kinuha ko yung daily rainfall and kinuha ko yung annual rainfall maximum from each of the weather stations. So meron tayong mga missing data, we just denote them as missing and we assume data stationarity and madami tayong assumptions, pero those are theoretical and we will focus on the outputs on geographic information science. So the concept here is we will just fit multiple univariate distribution by estimating the location, mu, scale, and shape parameters kada station. So ito, if makita niyo sa table sa kanan, makuha natin yung location, scale, and shape parameter, tapos in-append na lang din natin yung mga return levels. Yung for example, sa Baguio, meron siyang level na 413 millimeters up to 100-year return level of 197 millimeter of rainfall. So, ibig sabihin po, as explained earlier, ang 100-year return level ay will be exceeded once every 100 years. So, ito yung plot niya. So, ito yung after point-wise fitting ng GED distribution. Sa left chart, yun yung mga 5-year rainfall return levels. Yung mga rainfall na dumadating once every 5 years. Yung sa kanan yung mga rainfall amounts na dumadating na once every 100 years. So yung first hypothesis natin dito ay yung regions in the northern and eastern part receive more extreme rainfall levels. Pero mas insightful, di ba, kapag naka-provincial lang estimate? Kasi as you can see here sa kanan, meron mga provinces na wala namang weather station. So we will perform a spatial interpolation. Gamit tayo ng kriging, ordinary kriging, to be specific, using the PyKridge package. So ang i-interpolate natin ay yung mga parameters na in-estimate kanina using maximum likelihood estimation, yung location mu, scale sigma, and shape parameter chi. So we will also assume na yung provincial centroid represents the whole province. So now we have here return level map. So 5-year rainfall return levels per province of Philippines, and 10-year, 25-year, and 50-year. And lastly, we have here a 100-year rainfall return levels. Again, ito yung rainfall amount na dumadating once every 100 years. So Luzon and eastern portion of Visayas experience the most extreme rainfall in the country and more frequently. So for future studies, we can downscale this down to city level while considering numerous landscape features such as mountains for orographic effect, water bodies, infrastructure, land cover characteristics, and other components of climate system. Ito yung medyo time constraint lang din kasi kaya hindi ko siya natuloy and I need more data for that. So, this is particularly useful for Philippines having a complex topography. So for example, yung rainfall intensities nga sa port area sa Manila, very different siya dun sa rainfall intensities na nakakuha sa Science Garden na nasa Quezon City. Pero they are just in the same regions. So for a summary, ito yung mga process na ginawa ko. First is I extracted recorded annual rainfall maxima. And next is yung fitting univariate GEV distribution using yung open terms package. Third is yung using yung estimated parameters, we perform spatial interpolation using ordinary kriging. And lastly, minap natin yung 5-year, 10-year, 50-year, and 100-year rainfall return levels for each of the Philippine provinces. Ayun, that's all po. Thank you.
Thank you, Siegfried, for your presentation. We are now on the last presenter for DRRM. So Martin will be presenting his project, Flood Hazard of Roads. Hi, Martin. You can now take the floor.
Sorry. Martin, try again. You should be able to present now.
Yes, Martin, you can now share your screen.
Okay, Martin, your share screen is having a problem. Disable mo muna, then enable mo ulit yung share screen. Actually, never mind. That's okay. Nakikita na namin. Go ahead.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Martin, I can see your mic is unmuted, pero wala kami naririnig. Sasalita ka ba?
Martin, we cannot hear you. Please come again.
Hello.
There, pero mahina. Can you please?
Hello.
Ayan, that's better. Sige. You may now proceed with your presentation.
Okay. So yung about is more on visualization side only. Tapos then yung significance na naisip ko is siguro pwede siya magamit for planning ng or designing ng drainage systems. And sa data naman, madami based na din dun sa trinay kong i-research, yung mga nahanap ko na pwedeng kunin na data para din sa flood risk. Mainly nag-focus muna ako dun sa elevation contributor sa flood. Kaya ito yung mga nakikita kong possible sources. Yung una is LiDAR. Kaya lang parang wala akong mahanap na available for Philippines. Then yung sumunod is SRTM na available din siya sa Google Earth Engine. Kaso yung parang yung resolution niya is hindi masyadong kita yung mga roads, ganun. Then sumunod yung Sentinel-1. Ayan, available din siya sa Google Earth Engine. Then yung ALS naman, wala akong makita na parang recent lang na data na si Sentinel-1. So pag-process sa kanya is kinuha ko lang din yung data from Google Earth Engine. Tapos kumuha lang ako ng bounds within Metro Manila. Tapos pinilter ko lang per quarter yung images galing sa Sentinel-1 up to September 30. Tapos stop ko sila para maging RG. Then ito na yung kinalabasan niya after June. So bali yung after niya ma-tune yung initially is kasama dapat yung water na part. Tapos yun yung parang pinaka tinanay ko lang i-tune na matanggal yung water. In-export ko na yung rasters sa Google Drive. Yung meron ako nung digital elevation model. Nag-proceed na ako para investigate naman kung paano check yung flow direction at saka flow accumulation. Bali, ito yung para sa flow direction. So, bali yung direction is parang mapupunta lang siya dun sa pinakamababa na part. Tapos ina-assignan siya ng value. Parang ina-encode lang yung direction niya gamit yung ganitong scheme. The direction scheme. Tapos parang itinatali lang yung mga nagpo-point per pixel kanya per pixel. Sinubukan ko siyang i-implement tapos after ako mag-search may nakita ko na Python module na ginagamit for hydrology na ginawa ni John Barnes. Kaya yun na lang yung ginamit ko. Ito is nile-load ko na ulit yung digital elevation model. Ito yung itsura niya pag not. Bali, may kita dito yung mabababang part. Ito naman is yung Marikina River. Tapos, kailangan siya parang i-process muna yung digital elevation model para ma-ensure na walang yung depressions is parang yung mga part na masa-stuck yung flow na hindi na siya magpo-progress sa ibang location. Papunta ko na rin sa ocean. Ganun. Bali may ganito siya ngayon. Parang nabawasan yung dark blue parts. After nun, pwede na magawa yung flow accumulation. Gamit na yung na-field na digital elevation model. Bali ganito na yung itsura niya. So, papansin dito na karamihan nung mga road saka yung stream, nasasama din kasi yung stream dun sa natitrace na hindi ko matanggal siya dito sa pinakauna sa digital elevation model. Kaya yan. Nakikita rin dito na yung concentration ng flow, dami dun sa ma-recognize mo pa yung shape ng sa Valenzuela na highway. Tapos, meron din function dun sa ReachDM na package na parang pwede ma-simulate yung case na kapag yung liquid is na-absorb. So, yung dun sa case na yun, parang na-distribute lang yung tubig. As wala masyadong high accumulation na area. Tapos, sinubukan ko din yung case na parang sa isang part lang. So is more andun sa right side lang yung ulan. Bali, magpo-flow yung ulan patungo dito sa daan na to at saka ito. So, findings ko lang parang based din sa visualization na parang majority naman ng roads kasi nga na-convert na siya to concrete na hindi na masyadong mag-absorb ng water. Kaya nagiging stream halos karamihan sa lahat ng road. Pero kapag meron namang high absorption, siguro pag nagtatanim tayo ng mga halaman yan, parang hindi na wala naman yung masyadong high accumulation. Yun lang naman. Yun lang yung presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, for your presentation. That's all for our second set of presentations related to DRRM. So let me recall. The first presentation is Geospatial Analysis of Evacuation Centers and Flood Hazards in Marikina City. Next is Estimation of Probabilities of Extreme Rainfalls in the Philippines. And last would be Flood Hazard and Flow Accumulation Analysis of Roads. So we will now open the floor for our second Q&A session. So may I ask the previous presenters to please kindly open their camera for questions. Okay, so First question would be addressed to Rafael for the geospatial analysis of evacuation centers and flood hazards in Marikina Center. The question is, which library did you use for clustering? So did you also account for location variables for the clustering of yung mga evacuation centers? Rafael, please.
So for the final, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, we can hear
Okay.
you.
So I use k-means clustering for the final model, and I have researched na yung k-means is pwede rin gamitin sa mga geospatial data at kinoconsider niya rin yung geometry column ng isang geodata frame.
So
It's
for
from
the
sklearn.
for the spatial k-means clustering, which library yung ginamit mo? Is it sklearn or other
Yes,
library?
sklearn po.
Okay. So it's sklearn. The next question will be for Rafael again. So ano yung basis ng classification levels? Kung bakit siya high, low, at saka no risk or no hazard? Ikaw, sino yung nag-set nun? Ikaw din ba?
Hello. Yung nag-set nun is yung from the data mismo ng lipad, yung high, medium, and low. Wait. Nakalagay doon na level 3 is 1.5 meters. So yun yung parang minimum level ng water na kayang na minimum level of water na what do you call this, na yung nasa ground. So yung level 2 is 0.5 meters to 1.5 meters, and yung level 1, which is yung low, is 0.1 meters then to 0.5 meters.
Okay, sige. I have a question for you, Rafael. Dun sa spatial clustering ng mga evacuation centers, di ba meron tayong recommendations no, na mas safe dun sa Fortune. Pero kasi we also have to consider yung tinatawag nating carrying capacity. Sige, let's say na safe yung evacuation center doon, pero it doesn't mean na kaya niyang mag-accept ng lahat ng tao. You may also want to add that on your interpretation of results. Ayun lang. Tapos, ayun, sige. So, next question is for Siegfried for the estimation of probabilities of extreme rainfalls in the Philippines. So, were you able to where were you able to obtain the CSV files for the rain stations? Are they available upon request from Pag-asa?
So, ayun po, dito sa chat, nilagay ko na rin dito yung notebook ko, tapos kung paano kinuha yung rainfall data. So, rainfall data ay galing siya sa NOAA's FTP server. Pwede nang i-copy-paste itong FTP na link sa inyong file explorer para maka-access kayo ng free climate data. So I think this is parang required na magbigay din kasi yung Pag-asa ng data sa NOAA for sa World Meteorological Organization ata, or I don't know. Pero butas-butas yung data rito eh. Pero yung data lang naman kinuha ko is annual maxima. So pwede na i-check yung GitHub ko. So meron ng instructions doon how to extract data from their FTP server, both using R or Python. Pero yung sa Python medyo hindi pa established eh. Medyo R pa rin kasi ako. First time kong gumamit ng Python dito sa niya, sa workshop na to. So, yan po. Data from Pag-asa is not free unless I think estudyante ka na para sa research. Ano.
Okay. Someone agrees. Anyway, I have a question for you, Siegfried, kasi di ba for the estimation of probabilities of extreme rainfalls, you use yung generalized extreme value distribution. Paano mo siya define sa Python or sa code? Which library did you use?
Okay, merong package yung Python na open terms na pwedeng mag-fit ng iba't ibang distribution. So pwede may Poisson, may normal distribution, merong Pearson, and ayaw ko lang merong Pearson. Pero anyway, meron yung generalized extreme value distribution na yun nga, na fit using open terms. Pero yung computation ng return levels, medyo custom custom yung codes na ginawa ko doon kasi wala akong makitang package for that. So medyo nag-hard. Well, very basic lang naman. So nag-derive lang ako mathematically tapos nilagay ko na doon sa codes. Yan.
Dun sa parameter fitting ng nung GEVD. So parang nag-call ka lang ng method, no? So tapos siya na yung mag-fit for you. Di ka na nag-numerical method or something, no? Parang automatic na yung fitting.
Opo, maximum likelihood estimation daw yung algorithm na ginagamit ng open curves na
MLE.
package. Oo nga po,
Okay.
sana yung pag-asa makapagbigay na ng data na free. Yan. May tagapag-asa ba dito? Baka naman.
Ayan. Sige. Sige. Let me see the questions for a while.
Hi, Frank. I have a question.
Yes, please, Kez.
First of all, congratulations for your presentations. For Rafael, my question is, how can you extend your project in sort of finding optimal locations for evacuation centers, since you already presented that there is a need to add more evacuation centers, especially for example, Tuman. And what we know is Tumana is in a really low area where it always almost always floods when there are known events that would really flood the area. So yeah, that's my question.
I'm considering to use rainfall data per barangay, pero hindi pa po ako nakakahanap ng data kasi na ganong ka-granular na size of data, but I'm considering to use that for the analysis to extend the project.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a question for Martin. My question is, you mentioned that you did the analysis for the design of drainage system. So how would this project that you did go into the design of drainage systems?
Redirect some of the flow into other channels. I think that is currently my idea on how it could be used. I think currently it mainly goes to Marikina River based on my observation.
Would you need other data sets to implement this?
I think a much higher resolution of the elevation model, since I think the one that I used is still a bit noisy, since this it is using the C-band for the which is it is using the C-band SAR channel, which does the vegetation, the elevation model that might not be reflecting the actual ground data.
Thank you, Martin, for that answer. Frank, and that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Kez. Okay, for Rafael, pwede daw ba humingi ng GitHub code nyo? Ayun lang, commercial.
Hindi ko ba siya
And, yeah. Sige, go.
Hindi ko pa siya na-upload actually sa GitHub, but open naman ako i-share. I-type ko lang yung username ko. Wait.
Sige. Meanwhile, ang question ko sa iyo, Rafael, is kasi di ba meron ka bang knowledge din dun sa current protocol ng evacuation sa Marikina? For example, yung nangyari yung typhoon last week. So I believe the control is kung ano yung pinakamalapit na evacuation center, doon ka talaga pupunta, di ba? Pero based on your analysis, meron bang can you suggest a better way on evacuating these people?
Actually, we can use machine learning then for that, yung para malaman yung distance of evacuation centers na pwedeng puntahan ng mga inhabitants, yung mga malalapit sa kanila. But since majority of barangays sa evacuation center naman, so doon talaga sila pumupunta sa sa barangay na nandun sila. So exception lang yung Tumana since they have no evacuation centers based on the data. So pumupunta sila talaga sa Malanday and H. Bautista Elementary School to seek shelter.
Ayan, thank you. Baka may other questions pa tayo from our judges and fellow participants. So I believe we're done. So thank you again, participants and judges, for the Q&A session on DRRM. And now for our last session, it will be focused on health and COVID-19. So for the first presentation in this session, here are John Chris, Mark Rovic, Christian, and John Carlos for dynamics of COVID-19 analysis on how cases change over time and its relationship with external variables. Please, team, please take it away. You may now share your presentation.
Sorry, that was delayed. So, Mr. John Chris Torres, you should have permission now. Who's your colleague, John? Mark Robic. 1 second.
Thanks, Ray.
Okay, permissions granted. Go ahead.
There's no sound, I believe. Yeah, please share na lang with sharing your computer sound.
Still no sounds. I'm sorry.
Mhm. Sige, baka other group members can share the presentation from their end. Sige, let's try again. Yeah, wala pa ring sound. Are you guys amenable to present na impromptu on the spot?
Yes, sir. I think we can present impromptu, sir.
Yes, please, thanks. Yeah, please proceed.
Sir, we're just loading the PowerPoint, the slides for a while, if we may, sir. Sorry for the inconvenience.
There, we see the Figma.
Is the slide, are the slides on, sir?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, sir, we will start the presentation. So, good afternoon to every one of you. Sorry for the inconvenience on that. So, we are going to present our project titled Dynamics of COVID-19, an analysis on how cases change over time and its relationship to different external variables. So, my teammates are Mark Rovic R. Baja, Christian R. Olandesca, John Carlos R. Opleda, and yours truly, John Chris G. Torres. So, we will proceed.
COVID-19 visualizations. Finding a way to visualize COVID-19 infection, visualizations for imperatives and decision makers, geospatial features for location identification.
And for the dot density map, so this shows the concentration of different variables in certain geospatial features, not geographical, and it shows where a specific variable is in the geospatial feature of the variable in the world and how it is dense in a specific area. And one thing to note is dot density maps do not reflect the actual location of the variable, but it is rather an approximation with respect to the geospatial feature of the variable. So it gives a general idea of the dynamics of certain variables. And it is also amenable to a visualization like time series and stuff. So next slide. So how about COVID-19 dot density maps? So COVID-19 dot density map shows where in the country or a specific geospatial area the cases are high or low or concentrated or dense. So it depicts the density of different infections in a specific geospatial feature. So it is an easy visualization of location that you can generate imperatives and insights healthcare-wise. So next. So how did we accomplish the project? So the core of the project is the data engineering of different open data sets using Python, Pandas, and GeoPandas. GeoPandas mainly for the geospatial or geocoding of the project. So we leverage different open data sets for more drill down analytics and visualization of the COVID-19 cases. And we utilize different GIS concept to produce the maps that we will be showing a little bit later. So next. So this is one of our products. So this is the Philippine COVID-19 dot density map of infections here in the Philippines. So it is a map that visualizes active COVID-19 infections around the Philippines at the barangay level. So all data that we used here are open source. So this map depicts the categorization of infection of different cases with respect to its geospatial feature at the barangay level. So the data source here is the Department of Health's COVID-19 data drop, which is an initiative of the department ever since the pandemic began. And the administrative boundaries that we use is the dataset provided by NAMRIA, the National Mapping Agency. So as we can see here, we can see the different categorization of the COVID-19 cases in the Philippines. So from green, it is the asymptomatic cases. Mild will be the orange one, and the darker orange will be the moderate, and severe will be red, and violet will be critical. So initial exploration, we can see that most of the cases are concentrated on major cities in the Philippines, like the National Capital Region, cities in the Calabarzon area, Central Luzon, and the Panay Islands. So as we can see here, there is a concentration of severe, moderate cases at the National Capital Region, and mild cases are spread up to the northern part of the country. And most cases in the Visayas region is concentrated on the Panay Islands, mainly in the Iloilo area. And in the Bohol area, rather, here we can see that most cases in the Bohol Island is moderate, severe, which is troublesome because it is greater than the mild and asymptomatic cases in the island. So here we can generate an insight that we can like deliver more healthcare resources at that island because most cases there are severe, moderate. And next. So this is a more drilled down visualization of our product. So here we can show the different concentration of different types of infections. So if you can just click on the different types, severe, moderate, mild. Here we can see the concentration of different types of infection. Most cases are moderate and asymptomatic. But as we can see at the island of Bohol, can you click the moderate case, please? If you can see at the island of Bohol, most cases here are above mild and asymptomatic, and it is greater than the mild and asymptomatic cases, which is troublesome. So this is a good visualization technique that we can generate insights and imperatives on for like LGUs to decide on what to do to allocate more healthcare resources and such. So the next for the time series analysis. So here we generated the time series analysis of dot density map of the capital city, Manila. So the data source here is the Manila Public Information Office. So we gathered the data manually because they do not provide spreadsheets and stuff. So we gathered the data manually. So this is a time series analysis of how the COVID-19 infections in Manila changes over time. So from August 1, we can see a great increase in COVID-19 cases up until the last day of the month. And if you can just click the September month of the month, please. And at the month of September, the continuous rise of COVID-19 infections in the capital city is unstoppable. It is spreading to the barangays or the districts of Tondo, Santa Ana, and other parts of the Ermita region. So next, the last product that we produced is the ratio of healthcare workers and the COVID-19 infections in the Philippines. So as you can see here, the visualization that we provided is the ratio between healthcare workers and COVID-19. So if the ratio is less than 1, that means that the specific municipality is overwhelmed. So I just want to take note that the healthcare worker data is from 2018 and might vary up until to this day. So I think the slides were gone. So basically, what we did there is just the visualization of different COVID-19. The last visualization is we had is the ratio between the municipal level of how we depicted the ratio between healthcare workers and the infection rates in Manila. So that is the last product. So the conclusions that we have is basically COVID-19 is still here. So it is not going away anytime soon, even with the vaccination drives and efforts. So, and we can say that the best way or the best alternative to choropleth maps is dot density maps, which shows a more in-depth and drill down visualization of the COVID-19 cases, or when we are trying to visualize specific variables. So that is it for our presentation. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but yeah, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you, John, Chris, and team for the presentation dynamics of COVID-19. Next presentation is from Samuel, implementation of barangay categorization with relation to COVID-19 infection rate and venue map key values through K-means clustering and open street maps. That's a rather long title, but Samuel, please, you may now start your presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, my presentation is about barangay categorization in Metro Manila via venue frequencies for COVID-19 insights through K-means clustering and OpenStreetMaps and Foursquare. So my name is listed over there. Next. So what is it about? So mainly it's barangay categorization done through unsupervised learning via K-means clustering, a machine learning methodology. I had these concepts underlined just in case you want to learn it in your own free time. So for this activity, I used geospatial data, which is venue data from OpenStreetMaps and Foursquare API at excuse me, barangay level. So I done this project for COVID-19 granular contingencies, but it's not strictly for COVID-19. So clusters will be analyzed for insights with respect to COVID-19 data. So what is its significance? So mainly first is insights in Metro Manila demographics. So categorization will show the variety and commonality of venues within barangays. And second is the testing the availability, completeness, and viability of Philippine open source geospatial data for projects. So for starters, how did I collect the data? So for COVID-19 cases, I only gathered 1 day basis only because the data that was gathered was through FB pages of local government units. And if you've seen some of their posts, they just upload it in image format. So you cannot load it directly to code. So you have to manually encode it yourself for each barangay and city. So for the population data, so I gathered it from Wikipedia, which is referencing from 2015 census of PSA. So why Wikipedia? Because they already encoded it in the website and I can simply scrape it instead of manually encoding it myself from PSA. So we're working under the assumption of that the ratio of population versus barangay is still observed today. So my point there is that, for example, if a large barangay, let's say Tondo, has a 10,000 residents in that area and a smaller barangay has 2,500 residents, after some time, you should still observe that same ratio, quote unquote. So that was my assumption. So for the next slide, so the second part of the data, the geospatial data. So I used 2 APIs from OpenStreetMaps. So OpenStreetMaps data included venues, stations, shops, schools, to name a few. For Foursquare, it is a city guide similar to TripAdvisor. So strictly venues only was gathered from Foursquare. But I would like to indicate that I did not use them collectively. I implemented the analysis differently. So for the time invested crawling, times 8 hours, more or less. So the rows were 42,024. So yeah, I just like to note that it's a palindrome, conveniently. So how did I process it using Python? So first, I implemented an automated extract, transform, load of geospatial data. So extraction of data through API connection. Data set is also cleaned for inconsistencies in the labeling, and reformatted the table and data frame for loading. So, oops. So to start the first part of my code, I'm not showing the code part here because the time is limited. So this is a sample interface version of the API called the Overpass API. You can access it in overpass-turbo.eu. So this is a sample screenshot of the API in action. So I did not use this website. So I used the wrapper in Python. So zooming in, so I have a sample barangay here, Poblacion in Makati. So if you entered this query while restricting the administrative level to 10 and the administrative boundary to strictly Poblacion, you will get this data set, small data set, including all of the nodes mapped in OpenStreetMaps. So on the right side, we can see that the tags of the node. Well, I only got the amenity, which is for this one, cafe name Starbucks. So second part is the clustering of venues. So I implemented k-means clustering to to determine groups of barangays that have a degree of commonality in present venues. Lastly, I also implemented, sorry for the transitions, I did not know that was there. So data visualization of clusters and population. So I will not be showing my visualizations because of time constraint, but potential correlation was implied through visualization and determined clusters, which I will be discussing here in my findings. So right now we have two maps, convoluted maps. So the size of nodes is proportional to the size of the population in barangay. So we have 555 barangays in total, but it's not necessarily that OpenStreetMaps and Foursquare yielded 555 sets of data, unfortunately, as observable there that most of the I did not cover the North Caloocan because it's for some reason it wasn't crawled by the two APIs, but there must be something wrong with my code. And to add, in OpenStreetMap, some of the what do you call this, barangays in South Caloocan and Manila were also excluded. So for OpenStreetMaps, when I implemented the code, I tried to find 5 clusters, but only 2 major clusters were observable for OpenStreetMaps and 3 major clusters observable for Foursquare. So for OpenStreetMaps, first of all, I would like to clear this out. So for each number here, so for example, cluster 1, which is red, let me show here, red, so as you can see here. So so the way to interpret here is that for most of the barangays, the number 1 most frequent venue in these barangays is a school. So that's how it's interpreted. So for most barangays, the second most frequent venue for most of the barangays in these clusters is a town hall or a barangay hall. For the second clusters, which contains 86 barangays, the top 3 were restaurant, fast food, and cafe. So but just by eyeballing it, we can see that cluster 1 are residential areas and cluster 2 are business districts. For Foursquare, it's a little bit complicated. So we have 3 clusters: red, violet, blue, which I will be discussing in a later slide. So since it is a API that provides venues, obviously the most frequent would be fast food, Filipino restaurants, and convenience stores, because that would be the target market of most of the barangays. So drilling down, so I have here a table, 2 tables. So for the red, so I just like to reiterate, red is the residential cluster, orange is the business district cluster. So for red cluster, we observe a higher mean population and a higher mean of COVID cases. But as you can see, the percent population is lower compared to the percent population. By the way, the percent population is the percentage infected with COVID at that specific time. So we can see that even though the population is lower in orange or in the business districts, we can see that the population infected is actually higher compared to the residential areas, although it's a little, I'm not sure if that's expected or not because I'm not an epidemiologist at the end of the day. So for Foursquare, we have 3 clusters, red, violet, and blue. So the blue one, I'll just skip to the next slide. So for the first cluster, which is the most common cluster, most cluster with the most barangays. So they have an ample assortment of shops with the highest number of unique venues, conveniently located within residential areas. For the second cluster, the violet cluster, convenience stores dominating most of top 3 common venues in barangays. I wish I can show it here, but I did not include it in the slides. But for the second point, residential areas as well, but with different demographic compared to cluster 1. So the assortment of shops is much lower in this cluster. So for the third cluster, the blue cluster, this one is Tondo, for example. This is, I think, around BGC. So cluster 3 has the highest population count, highest mean population count. Most of these shop selections found were mostly found on malls. So we can deduce here that most of these areas are barangays that most frequented by neighbor barangays as well. So these are frequented venues like malls and other similar complex. So I did not make any other insights because my data was incomplete, as I've mentioned earlier, due to the Manila and Caloocan missing data. So, but in conclusion, geospatial and census data sources in the Philippines are still lacking in terms of uniformity, content, and accessibility. So I had to infer some of the data there as well. For results, 2 to 3 clusters of barangays may be categorized to implement granular contingencies for COVID with respect to demographics. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Samuel, for your presentation. And now, last but not the least, presentation for our COVID-19 and health theme. We have here Jose Miguel Torres for predicting heat stroke prone areas using land surface temperature as a real-time proxy for heat index. Miguel, please, you can now share your screen.
Good day, everyone. I'll be presenting on predicting heat stroke prone areas using land surface temperature as a proxy to heat index. So just to recap, last SIICaP, we were shown that NDVI, a measure of how much vegetation is in an area, negatively correlates with land surface temperature, providing evidence of urban heat island effect. This implies that cities may be more at risk to heat-related illnesses, but then we must ask ourselves, to what degree, right? Land surface temperature isn't a measure of how hot it is for us per se, but of how hot the land is. So we need to find a way to measure the likelihood of stroke. And the answer to that is we use a heat index. How the heat index works is it's modeled after the standard human proportions, and it takes into account how the human body regulates heat. It regulates heat through sweat. So it takes into account humidity. So the more humid it is, the harder it is to regulate heat. This is the formula. And so we also need to ask ourselves, if we can calculate the heat index, why do we need to use land surface temperature in its place? Well, the problem with the heat index is that it's reliant on atmospheric readings from weather stations, and you can only have so many weather stations, right? And you can only have as good resolution as that gets. Land surface temperature, on the other hand, is very precise. For example, from Landsat in last SIICaP's meeting, it was 30-meter resolution, which is quite good. And yeah, heat stroke is quite a real threat, and the ability to identify areas with a high heat index using some sort of estimates like land surface temperature would really help in both preventing deaths and help inform urban planning decisions, like where to put parks, for example. So I used two datasets. One is the MODIS Terra land surface temperature dataset, and the other is the NOAA real-time mesoscale analysis dataset for specific humidity and air temperature. They were both rather low resolution. They're meteorological datasets. They come like that. I had to resample the land surface temperature. I upscaled it to 2,500 meters in resolution. And I used the Los Angeles area during the recent heat wave from September 1st to 7th. And I also looked at California as a whole for a demonstration regarding geography. Afterwards, I used relative humidity to calculate specific humidity, which is used to calculate heat index along with air temperature. Afterwards, I correlated it with land surface temperature. Okay, so my hypotheses were that land surface temperature will strongly correlate with atmospheric temperature as well as heat index. And this is the LA area. It's rather low resolution because of the data set. And already here on the top left, we can see the atmospheric temperature. And on the bottom left, we can see the heat index. And we can see just from looking at the graphs that they correlate very strongly. Meanwhile, the land surface temperature, we can already see differences between the heat index and land surface temperature. So these were the results of the Pearson correlation. I got R squared values of 0.51 and 0.56 for land surface temperature to air temperature and heat index respectively. This means that around 50%, 51 and 56% respectively of the variation in land surface temperature could be explained by these two, or rather the other way around. I also wanted to look at California as a whole because something I noticed was that the geography also really affected the atmospheric temperature and therefore the heat index. For example, this blue area here, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but this blue area here is actually a mountain range, and this over here is actually a valley. And over here, the very red part on the right side is a desert. And on top of that, the relative humidity in this particular week was actually quite low. And what that means is the heat index actually ended up lower than the actual atmospheric temperature, which means it actually felt a little cooler. So conclusion, land surface temperature moderately correlates with heat index and air temperature, but due to its variation, it actually varies as much as 28 degrees. It cannot be used by itself as an estimate of heat index. And recommendations, I recommend to look into other factors such as elevation, geography, etc. And of course, due to limitations, I was only able to use a Californian dataset. I'd recommend to look at the Philippines as well because we have very different weather. It's much more humid here. And yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you, Miguel, for your output. And that is all for our presentations for COVID-19 and health. You may now type your questions on the chat box, and the presenters will address these questions to you ASAP. All right. So our judges, baka may tanong tayo for them. Sige. Let's wait for a few moments. So let me just recall yung presentations for COVID-19 and health. So first presentation is John, Chris, and team for dynamics of COVID-19, analysis on how cases change over time and its relationship with external variables. Next presentation is from Samuel, barangay categorization with relation to COVID-19 infection rate using OpenStreetMaps and Foursquare. And for Miguel Torres, using land surface temperature as a real-time proxy to heat index. Yes, Kez, please.
Hi, Frank. For Samuel, I think he mentioned that he used data from Facebook. So I'm just wondering, is this data not available dun sa DOH data drop?
When I try to check, I cannot get the data at the barangay level. So I'm not sure if that's possible right now because the data was last. I got that data last year when I did this project.
Okay, thank you. So far, yun pala yung questions ko.
Rain, may question ka?
Yes, for Miguel, with regards to heat index study. So you mentioned that. Sorry, 1 second. So aside from getting the heat in the area, I know that heat index is also affected by humidity. How do you? Sorry lang, pali camera ko. There we go. How do you correlate that with your data? How do you get the humidity and such? Kung kaya mo bang may pasok there?
Actually, yeah, I should have made it clear. I got the specific humidity of from the dataset, and I put it through a formula from the University of Miami to get the relative humidity, which is in tandem with the atmospheric temperature, is what is used to calculate the heat index.
Nice. Okay. Thank you. That's my question.
For those who used COVID-19 data, since we're a little bit, I don't know, some people are saying we're at the end part of the pandemic. Moving forward, how do you think you can use the analysis that you made in moving from pandemic to normal, normal time again?
Yeah, for Samuel and John Chris team, you may want to answer that question.
Can I answer first, sir?
Yes, please.
One thing that I can think about is we can see before transitioning at the post-pandemic phases, what are the trends of the types of infection we have right now? Like what is the trend that we can see every day in a time series manner, or what is the trend for specific cases like severe, moderate, mild, and asymptomatic? And what is the highest type of infection that is currently being felt right now? So before we can transition into a post-pandemic phase, we can determine on the severity of the cases that is still standing right now. And the thing that we can take a look at is how is the vaccination effort helping us to transition from a post-pandemic phase? If you can see, because most of the time the people who are being infected right now are the unvaccinated people. So the thing that we can deduce in this is this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated people. So these are the things that we can take into consideration before transitioning into a post-pandemic world. Is first, we can take a look at the trend of the type of infection that we are that we are feeling right now, and second is how can we correlate the vaccination to the drive that we can do to move to a post-pandemic phase. So that is my take on me.
Thank you so much. I think we can hear from Samuel.
From my perspective, we can incorporate these clusters to further regulate the movement of people in terms of foot traffic. And another thing would be at a larger scale would be, I think some of the clusters where business districts or, for example, as I mentioned, venues or malls, I think one large solution is to basically decentralize these districts from these clusters. But I'm not sure how to implement that besides depopulating Metro Manila itself. So besides depopulating and regulating traffic, I can't think of anything else.
Thank you so much for your answers. And then maybe a question for Miguel. With the data that you have, how does it limit the analysis that you've made?
Okay, well, my analysis was conducted at a scale of 2.5 kilometers. So there are actually datasets of around the same size available for the Philippines, but if I were to use it for example, NCR, it would actually be just a single pixel. So it's really a resolution problem, and unfortunately, that means I won't be able to like really identify like specific parts of a city that are really prone to heat stroke.
Have you looked into getting more local data into your analysis?
Yes, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to obtain, in particular, humidity data from Pag-asa in time for this event.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Frank. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Kez. So I believe we can now close this session on COVID-19 and health. So thank you again, everyone, the presenters and the judges for this Q&A session. So for the meantime, we will be having our wellness break for 5 minutes. Okay. Please be back by 3:29. Thank you. Ayan, our wellness break is done. So while our participants are settling down and our judges tabulate their scores, I would like to congratulate again and well done to our participants for this SIICaP Data Camp show and tell. So for our first team, which is mapping and geo-audio visualization, we have Oras, a rhythm generator based on geospatial time series data by Benjamin Jiao. Next, we have a mapping of public elementary schools for NCE race campaign from Jimmy and Meyer. Maayong hapon po. For our second team, DRRM, we have geospatial analysis of evacuation centers and flood hazards in Marikina City from Rafael Gutierrez. Next, we have estimation of probabilities of extreme rainfalls in the Philippines from Sigfred Codilla. Lastly, we have flood hazard and flow accumulation analysis of floods from Martin Arrogante. For our presentations on COVID-19 and health, we have dynamics of COVID-19 analysis on how cases change over time and its relationship with external variables from John Chris, Mark Rovic, Christian, and John Carlos. Next is COVID-19 implementation of barangay categorization with relation to COVID-19 infection rate through Cayman's clustering and OpenStreetMap's Foursquare data from Samuel, and predicting heat stroke prone areas using land surface temperature as a real-time proxy to heat index by Miguel Torres. Ayan. So, papunta na tayo sa exciting part, which is the awarding of best proposals and best presentations. Ayan. Team, pwede na ba tayong mag-award na to? Sige. Let's just wait for our results to come in. Sino pala dito yung mga nakapag-attend ng buong SIICaP Data Camp, all 5 sessions? Sige nga, please raise your hand para makita natin kung sino yung mga strong. Ayun, hello John Chris. Hello Jimmy, Sigfred. Ayan, special mention natin sila. Samuel, Kennerdale, Rafael, Aldrin, Denzel, dami pala oh. Gaius, Michelle, Crisel. Ayan. Dami, congratulations to everyone. So lahat ng mga nakakumpleto ng ating SIICaP Data Camp sessions will receive a certificate of completion, I believe. Sige, we will announce that later. So ito na yung exciting part. Awarding of the best proposal. So we have 2 categories. Yung best proposal based on the proposals that were sent last September 26, and the best presentations for today. So itong first category will be the awarding of best proposals. All right. Sige, pwede na bang next slide please. Ayan, for the third place, best proposal, dynamics of COVID-19, analysis on how cases change over time and its relationship with external variables. John Chris Torres, Mark Rovic Paya, Christian Olandesca, John Carlos Opleda. Congratulations. Meron bang to? Okay. Okay, wala pa atang photo opportunity. Mamaya na lang. Okay, mamaya na lang yung photo opportunity. Again, ayan. Third place, congratulations and job well done. Okay, next slide please. Ayan, for the second place, best proposals, Geospatial analysis of evacuation centers and flood hazards in Marikina City by Rafael Gutierrez. Congratulations and job well done. Ayan, for our first place, best proposal. Estimation of probabilities of extreme rainfalls in the Philippines by Siegfried Codilla. Ayan. Congratulations and job well done. Ayan, pwede bang photo opportunity yung mga nanalo for the best proposal? Sige, let's do it now. Para sige, yung mga best proposals, please kindly open your cameras and we will be having a quick photo opportunity. Ayan, sige. All right. Sige, 1, 2, 3. Okay na. Thank you. Tapos, ito naman yung mga nanalo for the best presentation. Sige. Let's wait for a while. For the results to come in. Sige, okay. Okay, for the best presentations for today's SIICaP Data Camp Show and Tell, third place will be implementation of barangay categorization with relation to COVID-19 infection rate and venue map key values, leukemias clustering, and OpenStreetMaps by Samuel Harrison Cerudo. Congratulations and job well done. Ayan. Okay, for our second place, best presentation. Ayun, dynamics of COVID-19 analysis on how cases change over time and its relationship with external variables by John Chris Torres and team. Congratulations and job well done. Okay, sino kaya yung first place? Sige, go. Next slide please. Ayan, first place is Oras Arithmetic Generator. Spatial Time Series Data by Benjamin Joseph Zhao. Congratulations and job well done. That's a rather very creative presentation. Ayan, no? We would like to request for a photo opportunity with the presenters. Please kindly open your cameras. Ayan. Once again, congratulations and thank you for sharing your interest and your time and your effort for this SIICaP Data Camp. And I hope ma-inspire pa yung other people to analyze geospatial data to improve our way of life. Ayan. Sino yung mag-screen share? Ay, mag-screenshot.
Ako na, sir.
Sige.
1, 2, 3, smile. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Ayan. To conclude our SIICaP Data Camp show and tell activity, here is our Chief Engineer RK Aranas of High Performance Computing and Information Systems Division to deliver his closing remarks.
And
Sir,
thank you.
please take it away.
Sige. Thank you, Frank. Ayun, so good afternoon, everyone. So, kita ba yung screen ko?
Not yet, sir.
Wait. Sorry. Okay, so again, thank you, everyone. So, just a brief recap. So, nung first day, we learned about Python, tsaka Google Colab. So, that's how we set up yung camp. And then the second day, we learned about vector data, tsaka GeoPandas. So, and then the next day, we learned about raster processing with Rasterio. And then we learned how to do it all together with yung combination na ng raster and vector data. So, and then after that, everyone had a chance to propose yung topics nila and to be mentored by the team. So we're very happy about the output. So thank you sa lahat ng mga nag-step up to present their projects. So since this is the data camp, I would just like to show some data. So we had, as of yesterday, about 1,240 registrants. And ito yung breakdown lang over the 5 days ng data camp. So ayun, we peaked at ng first day. So ayun, points, retrospective na rin to. So points for improvement, I guess, yung retention natin. But actually, this is expected sa mga events since yung mga tao, the first day, they're excited. And then the next days, you check kung it's for you. And then life happens. So ito yung mga weaknesses ng series. And since we're checking kung yung goal kasi natin is inclusivity. So ito yung top 5 na attendees ng data camp. So majority so far is ano pa rin. So Metro Manila and Luzon. My Cebu is here. And then as we go low, so we have to work pa on this. But we are actually humbled by the interest kasi as I mentioned, if you remember no first day, the data camp was actually, we had a very small cohort, so mga 30 na lang. So when we tried to scale it up, we weren't sure kung may interest ba. So we are very thankful for sa mga attendees. And ano din, yung breakdown natin, so far 714 male, 472 female. So I think we have to work on the gender parity pa. But I think this is actually medyo good na siya. I think this is a 60-40 split. We're still looking for data for in the future events. We would like to be more inclusive. So yung LGBT community and so all this is a long-winded way of saying thank you for attending our data camp. So I would like to thank yung si Sir Ariel for supporting this event and the SIICaP team, si Nico for leading this, and syempre yung mga supporting divisions namin, yung PR team at yung division, especially yung HPCISD. And last but not the least, yung mga audience, kasi without you, there would be no event. So our objective is, as always, is to help you learn. So we hope na may nakuha naman kayo, and we have, kung may ideas man kayo on how to process the data, I hope you know how, may skills na kayo somehow to do it. And also, yun, we never promise na it will take, this thing takes practice. So I hope you will practice your data skills, and I just want everyone to know this is not the last event. We are actually just getting started. So yung mga data na kuha namin sa inyo, yung mga feedback nyo, we are taking note of them, and so we hope to have a better event next time, and also to so I just want to say thank you and see you sa future events.
Thank you, Sir RK, for the closing remarks. Once again, congratulations to our presenters and winners for the SIICaP Data Camp Show and Tell event. So they will all receive prizes naman, no? And yeah, once again, thank you to all our audience, yeah, DENR, thank you, maraming salamat po for taking your time listening to our event. That's it all for today. So thank you. And we are happy to share our knowledge with geospatial data processing to all of you. And I hope you all learned a lot. So to receive your certificate of attendance for today's session, please answer the evaluation form sent in the chat box. And for those who completed all sessions of SIICaP Data Camp, you will receive a certificate of completion. This event is brought to you by PhilSA Space Information and Infrastructure Bureau and part of celebration of World Space Week Philippines. Once again, I am Frank from High Performance Computing and Information Systems Division. See you all again next time. Watch out for updates on our PhilSA website and social media pages. Thanks and have a good day.
Paano pala, sir? Ay,